Okay, let's get underway. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's event, Japan-UK Relations After Brexit, looking towards a closer economic partnership. I'm Michael Lawrence, and on behalf of all of us at Asia House, I'd like to thank you for being with us today. Asia House, with the support of the Government of Japan, has examined the future of UK-Japan relations, and we will today deliver the findings of our report and explore them further with a range of experts. For decades, Japan and the UK have enjoyed a strong relationship, but it has not often hit the headlines. A senior UK official speaking at Asia House a few years ago summed it up to me as follows. He said, "The problem with the Japan-UK relationship, in terms of grabbing attention, is that there is no problem with the Japan-UK relationship." At today's conference, we will brief you on a report which we've produced over the last 2 months, which examines the likely path of UK-Japan trade following the signing of the UK-Japan Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. That agreement marks what is potentially a new and dynamic phase in the relationship between the two countries. Asia House conducted focus groups with business leaders, policy experts, and academics, and a range of individual interviews. From our research, we have compiled a number of recommendations which would drive even greater trade and investment in this post-Brexit era. In a moment, we'll hear from Lord Grimstone, the UK Minister of State for Investment, after which Ed Ratcliffe, the Head of Research and Advisory at Asia House, will brief us on the report and then chair a discussion with a distinguished group of speakers to explore the findings. I will then be joined by Takahiko Nakao, who until recently was President of the Asian Development Bank and previously Vice Minister of Finance and International Affairs, Japan, and Lord Stephen Green, the Chairman of Asia House, for a high-level dialogue on UK-Japan cooperation and a look at the role the two nations can play in the increasingly complex global trade order. But first, to get us underway, it is my great pleasure to invite His Excellency Hajime Hayashi, Japanese Ambassador to the UK, to make the opening address. Your Excellency, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Michael, for your kind introduction. Lord Green, Lord Grimstone, distinguished guests, dear colleagues and friends. It is a great honor to have the opportunity to give a keynote speech at this conference and to be joined today by so many people with an interest in Japan-UK relations. Before I begin, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to all those involved in this project and the report, which is presented by Asia House today as a final piece of this project. The recommendations set out in the report, including those about the global level rule-based order, digital and climate change, increasingly relevant in the bilateral and the global context. For Japan and the UK, 2021 is a special year. Both the Japan-UK Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement and the UK-EU Trade and Cooperation Agreement underpin the UK's future after Brexit, and we are witnessing the outset of a new era. I feel really pleased and deeply honored to start the role as Ambassador of Japan to the UK under such circumstances. Today, I would like to give an overview of where Japan and the UK can further enhance our cooperation. To consider the bilateral economic relationship between the UK and Japan, we must begin with the Japan-UK EPA, which came into force on the 1st of January this year. First of all, this EPA provides a legal framework for the future, bringing predictability and certainty for businesses and successfully securing continuity under Brexit. The total of goods and service trade between the two countries accounts for more than £30 billion a year in 2019, and Japanese businesses have been actively investing in the UK across various sectors for many years and even in decades. In fact, for Japan, the UK is the second largest investment destination only after the US, and the Japanese foreign direct investment in the UK span industries from the automobile sectors to pharmaceuticals and from real estate to communications. From the viewpoint of these businesses, ensuring continuity for such an important bilateral relationship is a significant achievement. And beyond continuity, this agreement includes some of the world's most advanced content, particularly regarding the digital sector, that will prove to be highly significant as we grapple with the pandemic and its aftermath. I strongly hope that the EPA will contribute to an even more active relationship between Japan and the UK in the future. In this sense, the Japanese government and Embassy of Japan are willing to extensively promote the utilization of this agreement in cooperation with our British counterparts. Along with the EPA, I also welcome the trade and cooperation agreement that has been agreed between the UK and the EU. At the same time, I expect the UK government to continue to work with the EU towards resolving the remaining issues, such as the disruption at borders and mutual equivalence for financial services. This is very important for Japanese businesses operating in the UK across Europe. Looking toward the future, I must say that the world today needs to re-establish the international rule-based order of trade and economy. Japan and the UK are the third and the fifth largest economies, respectively, and are the traditional champions of free trade. We share a responsibility to defend the free trading system. I believe that drawing on our strong bilateral bond, Japan and UK should now extend our active cooperation to bilateral and multilateral fields across the world. The first area of such cooperation is a comprehensive and progressive agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, or CPTPP. Japan welcomes the UK's formal request for accession on the 1st of February. Though individual member states have to be consulted, Japan, as it takes up the presidency of the TPP Commission this year, is willing to play its part. Japan expects the UK to show its readiness to work for the CPTPP's advanced and cutting-edge rules in this process. For the UK, accession will be a great opportunity to strengthen its ties with fast-growing Asian market, and moreover, it will lead to the UK's future commitment to Asia under the Global Britain agenda. There is great scope for bilateral cooperation in the Indo-Pacific region, and I hope Japan-UK cooperation in this domain grows wider and deeper in the coming days and weeks and even months and years. Next, I would like to highlight WTO reforms as a second area to discuss. As everyone is aware, WTO member states must work together to tackle a number of serious challenges under the newly elected Director General Okonjo Iweala. These include ending malfunction, modernization of rules, and reforming the special and differential treatment. Now that the UK has become an independent and important player out of the EU, there is further opportunity for Japan-UK cooperation towards a freer and fairer rule-based multilateral trading system. It is essential for WTO to be fair and open regime where all participants showing the value of free trade to benefit. To this end, let's work together for WTO reform, closely working with other major members of the WTO, particularly with both the US and the EU. This year, the UK chairs G7 and COP26, where world leaders will once again be able to discuss important topics face to face. In this pandemic, we are painfully aware now more than ever that we must tackle a range of global issues, which include not only infectious diseases, but also trade and climate change. It is vital for Japan and the UK to take initiatives and lead international discussion toward a brighter future. For my part, as Ambassador of Japan to the UK, I want to actively make the most of the chances and opportunities that I have discussed today. In this regard, I look forward to a fruitful and insightful discussion with the distinguished participants today. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Ambassador, thank you very much indeed. Very grateful to you for those remarks. Lord Grimstone, the UK Minister of State for Investment, couldn't be with us in person today, but he was very keen to take part in the event. So earlier we recorded his remarks on the UK and Japan partnership. Let's hear now from Lord Grimstone.
Thank you. Well, I'm very pleased to join you all. I've known and admired the work of Asia House over many years, and it's a particular pleasure to be part of this UK-Japan dialogue, a country I know very well, and of course, one of the UK's greatest friends. Japan and the United Kingdom first forged a relationship over 400 years ago. From our first agreement back in 1613, I'm very pleased that we are making history again in 2021 through our new forward-looking agreement. The Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, or CEPA, is the first major trade deal that the UK, now of course an independent trading nation, has secured in over 40 years. And how fitting it should be bringing two like-minded allies even closer. Our great island democracies have set the standard for high-quality goods, whether Japanese porcelain or British pottery, and as we now both push new boundaries of innovation, from robotics to AI to fintech. And the agreement deepens our trading relationship, already worth over £29 billion in 2019. And we will together help our economies blossom at this most pivotal moment when we and the world build back together from the COVID-19 crisis. And we will together support well-paid jobs in industries vital for our future. And we will together raise the bar for trade worldwide in the 21st century, building on high standards and modern rules. And I absolutely encourage both Japanese and UK businesses in today's audience to take full advantage of the benefits that this groundbreaking trade deal brings. As technology transforms the way we do business, a trend only accelerated by COVID-19, we have through this agreement embraced the future with cutting-edge digital and data provisions. This means protecting source code, enabling the free flow of data, whilst also agreeing a ban on data localization, which saves companies the cost of setting up servers in Japan or the UK. More liberal rules of origin will allow our clothing and confectionery exports to benefit from reduced duties. And our creative industries will have their brands and innovations protected as we go beyond the EU in tackling the online infringement of intellectual property rights. We have also gone further to protect the best of British food and drink through greater legal recognition of our produce, whether it be Stornoway black pudding, English sparkling wine, and of course Welsh lamb sold to the Japanese market. And we are looking forward to over 70 geographical indications being recognised, which would be over 10 times as many as before. Such advantages mean greater trade, which will boost jobs, prosperity and wages in every corner of the United Kingdom. And it will benefit the over 140,000 people working for Japanese companies across our country, such as Nissan in the northeast, Sony in South Wales and Mitsubishi Electric in Scotland. And the CEPA also has provisions which will improve the attractiveness of the UK business environment for Japanese companies through improved mobility and, for example, a simplified patent application process. Now we know that COVID-19 has significantly depressed levels of foreign direct investment at a time when increasing FDI and levels of international trade are the very ingredients necessary for a sustainable global recovery. Which is why I'm so pleased that CEPA will strengthen the already vibrant bilateral investment flows between our two countries. In 2019, UK companies invested over £5 billion in Japan. And that same year, the total stock of Japanese FDI in the UK amounted to over £90 billion, enormous figures. And this agreement will build on this solid foundation and bolster FDI in and from both our islands. Furthermore, the agreement takes the UK one step closer to joining Japan in one of the most dynamic trading areas in the world, the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. And this high standards club would deepen the UK's ties with economies worth nearly £9 trillion, securing tariff-free trade with its 11 members on 95% of goods, with modern provisions for services and technology trade. So, as we both begin to leave the dreadful pandemic behind us, let's grasp the wealth of opportunities in front of us and to use today's dialogue to bring us ever closer. Thank you very much and have a great dialogue.
Lord Grimstone, thank you very much. That was Lord Grimstone, UK Minister of State for Investment. I'm now going to hand over to Ed Ratcliffe of Asia House, and he's going to brief us on the research and then chair a discussion with some experts who took part. Ed.
Thanks very much, Michael. So just a quick bit of background on the report. So we developed this report to explore the current state of economic relations between the UK and Japan. And after the signing of the UK-Japan CEPA in October last year, and also after the UK left the EU on the 31st of December 2020. Based on our analysis and our investigations, we developed a set of policy ideas and recommendations for both the British and Japanese governments and other stakeholders to deliver mutually beneficial outcomes. The ambassador already touched on a few of those points, I'm glad to say. These touch both on the bilateral relationship and at the global level as well. I'd like to thank the business and trade experts who joined our focus groups for this report and the other interviewees, a couple of whom are on the panel with me later on, and those people who gave up their time to help us develop the ideas. A bit of context to kick off. So the agreement signed by the UK and Japan in October marks the beginning of a new phase in UK-Japan economic relations. The relationship between the UK and Japan has been variously described by some of our focus group participants as quiet and understated, which I think has already been reflected today, with both countries generally letting business get on with things for the past several decades, in fact. Japan and the UK are major investors in each other's economies, and a raft of commonalities further bolster the relationship, including a background in maritime trade, close economic and security ties with the US, a commitment to multilateralism, and a complex relationship with their continental neighbors, which has perhaps encouraged both economies to look beyond their immediate neighborhoods for trade relationships and an economic partnership. Looking back, I think the 1980s under Thatcher and Nakasone shaped the current UK-Japan relationship, which is now worth almost 32 billion in 2019. Japanese companies contribute 15 billion pounds to the UK GDP annually and play a very significant role in the UK's industrial sector. Nearly 1,000 Japanese companies are currently based in the UK, providing more than 180,000 jobs. The UK is a significant export market for Japanese firms, and similarly, Japan is a major export market for UK goods and services. Brexit has been a major concern for Japan, as many Japanese companies have used the UK as a gateway to the EU. Fallout from Brexit has so far been mixed. So, for example, while Nissan has committed to expanding operations in the UK, Honda is shuttering some UK production, although Brexit is not the only dynamic in this decision. Members of our focus groups reported that Japanese businesses and other stakeholders were respectfully confused by Brexit as a whole. We looked with our focus group participants at some of the challenges and some of the opportunities facing the UK and Japan. So the main challenges are finding ways to drive trade between two advanced economies with long-established relations, uncertainty over the UK's future strategy, particularly with its engagement in Asia, and an increasingly volatile geopolitical situation, which has significant implications for global commerce. Based on that, some opportunities broadly fall into two silos. So looking at improving bilateral trade and investment and improving the international environment, which will then have knock-on effects for both the UK and Japan in the broader global environment. Based on those challenges and opportunities, we built a set of recommendations. So on bilateral trade, these fall into getting the most out of the current Japan-UK FTA and then exploring areas for expansion of the agreement. Our first recommendation, to explore ways to get the most out of this existing FTA. There are significant opportunities in expanding the utilization of the UK-Japan trade deal. The EU-Japan deal has not driven trade significantly in its first 2 years, and one of the issues that has been identified on the EU-Japan trade side is the underuse of the agreements by SMEs in particular. Now, this is quite common as SMEs often lack the capacity and expertise to leverage such agreements. The UK and Japan agreement should not make the same mistake again, and several actions were suggested to us from focus groups, including the development of platforms for networking and business matching specifically focused on SMEs, government financing and capacity support for export of goods and services, particularly by SMEs again, and government support for companies looking to restructure supply chains or pursue R&D partnerships. Our second recommendation for improving bilateral trade focuses around exploring areas for expansion of the trade agreement itself. There are two areas where the trade agreement could be expanded in the future: on investment and on digital. On investment, trade experts have noted that the investment chapter of the agreement could have gone further to include additional aspects like investment protection and dispute resolution. So looking at these issues in the future, whilst it may not open the floodgates to huge amounts of investment, it would further support investment given the right conditions. The second area is on digital. This is probably more long-term. So as digital trade develops globally, the digital chapter, which is quite progressive in the current agreement, should be kept up to date. There are also other actions similar to those mentioned before on SMEs that can be applied to digital trade. Perhaps on the international side, there's greater scope for growth. So on improving the international environment, we developed 5 recommendations. The first is on defining and communicating on global strategies. The UK and Japan should develop and better communicate their global strategies. This recommendation is primarily directed at the EU, as observers in Japan and elsewhere in Asia may have heard of Global Britain, but are not necessarily sure what it means. Clear communication of overall foreign policies can help partners better understand how to work with the UK and also what to expect from the UK. Our second recommendation is around finding ways to support the rules-based international order, which has already been mentioned a couple of times today. The UK and Japan should continue to cooperate on upholding a rules-based international order from which both economies benefit. This means ongoing commitment to the G7 and other multilateral forums, as well as coordination in areas like WTO reform, which may be back on the agenda in the coming year under the new Secretary General. Our third recommendation is on leading the development of the global framework for digital trade. So building on the commitment to global rules, specifically the UK and Japan should be at the forefront of the global digital trade agenda, building the global frameworks for data and digital trade that will define commerce in the coming decades. Fourth, on cooperating on infrastructure, the UK and Japan should initiate more formal discussions on global infrastructure development. Both countries have significant expertise, large financial centers, and deep relationships with global policy banks. Both Japanese and British companies can benefit directly from infrastructure projects in third countries, but overall global development is a good thing for both economies' trade prospects in the long term. Finally, showing global leadership on climate change. The UK and Japan should increase cooperation on climate change, from green finance to sustainable infrastructure and technology, and this should be a major focus of the relationship, both from a risk and an opportunity perspective. In conclusion, there are many opportunities for the UK and Japan to cooperate for mutual benefit, either in bilateral trade or in building trade opportunities globally. I'd like now to move on to the panel. First of all, I'd like to introduce the panelists that I'll be bringing on. I would like to introduce Yoshinori Katayama, who is president of the Japanese Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Stephen Gomersall, who is CEO of Hitachi Europe, Minako Morita-Yaga, who is a fellow at the UK Trade Policy Observatory at the University of Sussex, and Dr. Jared Lyons, who is a senior fellow at Policy Change. So welcome all the participants to this panel. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Very good to see you. Yoshinori Katayama, I wonder if I might come to you first. So Japanese, I talked a little bit about Brexit and particularly on the effect of how Japanese companies are viewing the UK. So Japanese companies and the Japanese government did voice concern over Brexit over the past few years. So now that the UK has left the EU, what is the feeling among Japanese companies? How are they feeling about the future UK-Japan commercial relationship? And what kind of insights can you give us about how Japanese business is feeling at the moment about the relationship?
Thank you very much, Ed. Okay, and I'm very, at this time, optimistic in the future UK-Japan relationship right now. Actually, at the process of Brexit, many Japanese companies have been concerned about that, Brexit causes a certain barrier or hurdle afterward. But however, UK people's choice of leaving EU was made, and it should be respected. So Japanese companies in this country are adapting to the new environment by taking measures. We believe that our UK maintains a very excellent professional services such as finance, consulting, or legal. And we appreciate a very pragmatic and business-friendly system in this country. These points, as well as a very established global network, are very important for most of the Japanese companies to set up, for example, regional headquarters in London. On the other hand, EU remains unchanged as the UK's closest and largest trading partner. So I hope that the UK and the EU government to continue that constructive dialogue to solve the unsettled issues that including the finance sector, as Ambassador told. And Japanese financial institutions are seeking to gain access to the EU market after gaining EU approval for equivalence. But this is not limited to Japanese financial institutions, but also the UK financial community as a whole. So in terms of that expansion of Japanese companies into the UK, we believe it is very important to maintain the financial function of this country. In other words, to maintain London's position in the financial sector. But once again, that I would like to say I'm very optimistic in future, and we had a very good comprehensive economic partnership agreement signed last year, and UK plans to participate CPTPP. I believe these frameworks support to strengthen the commercial relationship between two countries. The future of the UK economy is the most important issue for Japanese companies operating in this country. We expect the economy to continue expanding and growing through trade agreements with other countries. That's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. That's good. Good to hear you're optimistic about this. Stephen Domisel, I wonder if I might come to you from a slightly different angle as CEO Hitachi Europe, so a company that's very embedded in the UK and Europe. So I guess based on the UK-Japan CEPA and the UK-EU trade agreement, from your perspective, can the UK retain some of the position as that entry point to Europe for Japanese companies that Katsuyama-san mentioned? It'd be good just to hear your views on, I guess, that kind of triangle relationship between the UK, Japan, and the EU.
Yes, thank you very much. I share Katayama-san's optimism, and Hitachi, which I represent, has continued to invest in the UK in our core businesses, particularly in the rail business, because we see this as a growing sector, excuse me, with HS2 coming along and other things. So as far as our existing investment is concerned, we remain committed to a very important market for us in the UK. And like others, as the ambassador said, we agree that having the UK-Japan agreement and the UK-EU agreement provides the basic platform for continued growth in trade and investment between the UK and Japan. But I don't think it's going to happen automatically. And I think, as I very much agree with what you have said in your report. I think it's going to take a lot of effort and effort by government and by business to find the right way forward. The key thing is that as a result of Brexit, the core argument which Margaret Thatcher, Conservative Prime Minister, took to Japan in the 1980s, that the UK was the business-friendly point of entry into the large EU market. That argument resonated for 30 years. And when it ceased to be applicable, there was a palpable sense of shock among Japanese companies. You say, respectfully confused, I think is a beautiful phrase to describe the reaction. But as Katayama-san said, companies absorb these things, companies adapt, and they continue to look for the positives. And I think the key thing is that we don't yet see quite how the British government intends to carry forward the British economic development, having achieved Brexit. It has some very powerful phrases and ambitions in terms of the levelling up agenda, in terms of the carbon zero agenda. And these all have great business possibilities, not only obviously for British companies, but for foreign investors, technology companies like ours, who have quite a lot to contribute to, for example, the decarbonisation agenda. But I think Katayama-san also said, it's really the state of the British economy which is going to bring people from abroad back into investing big time in the UK. And this does require a continued good relationship with Europe. The debate about equivalence in financial services is obviously one very important part of that agenda. But I think investors will be influenced by whether the EU is open or closed to the UK going forward. And there are a lot of issues on the agenda between us and Europe at the moment, which leave that slightly in the balance. Please. So we have a big interest in a successful implementation of the the UK-EU agreement. And since we have left, I would say the UK has to reinvent its investment brand. And I think the big opportunity is really to present the UK and make the UK a global hub for innovation and services industries. I mean, the export side of the agreement is very important because there is still scope, not only in Japan, but in the Pacific, for increasing physical trade. But my experience working in Japan is that actually British companies, except for the biggest and the best, have a lot of difficulty trading at such a distance. They just don't have the resources. It takes a lot of determination to crack the intricacies of some of these markets. And we can't expect that visible trade is going to increase dramatically, at least in the medium term. So the important thing for the UK, I believe, is the investment agenda. And in order to kickstart a return of investment, foreign direct investment to the UK, I think, as I said, we need to have a good relationship with Europe. We need to have a strong UK economy, a dynamic economy. We need to be open to talent from overseas. That has implications for our immigration policies. And we need to have British economic policies which give opportunities for foreign companies to invest here. And in the levelling up agenda, there is huge potential, as there is in the decarbonisation agenda. But at the moment, they remain ambitions rather than a set of policies designed to make these things happen over the medium and long term. So I think we, like others, have a lot to contribute, but we need to have the trigger in the form of policy frameworks and clear leadership from government, which will present the opportunities for the private sector to come in and invest. So yes, there is a lot of potential, but it does require commitment and action.
That's really good. Thank you. That was a very, very comprehensive view. Gerard Lyons, I might come to you as you were kind enough to talk to us about the report a few weeks ago now. And in the focus group for the report, you said that many of the things that make London an important financial hub are Brexit proof. And Stephen has talked a little bit about the investment side of things as well. So it'd be good to hear from you about, how can the UK ensure it remains a global financial hub that's able to invest in and receive investment from Japan? So on the investment side, and I know there may be a temptation to talk a lot about Brexit and the EU, but it'd be good to hear your thoughts, particularly on UK-Japan.
Well, thank you for the question. First and foremost, it's a great pleasure, honour to be here. I congratulate Asia House on putting together this very important report. Also, I would say with a policy exchange hat on, I'm a senior fellow there. I just mentioned that earlier this year, Policy Exchange produced a report on the Indo-Pacific with a foreword from the former Japanese Prime Minister, Mr. Abe. And I think in coming to your question, can I just put it in the context of some of these key drivers? And that's where I think your report and this future relationship between the UK and Japan is so key. Obviously, COVID will change things in many ways, but at the same time, some of the pre-COVID drivers are likely to be very dominant in the future, shaping events here in Britain and in Japan. And two in particular come out of your report and also that policy exchange report. One is the digital data revolution reflected in the fourth industrial revolution. Hence, it's vital and really encouraging that in this trade relationship signed, digital and data is so key. And the other key pre-COVID driver, which is very evident, I think now already, will become more so in the future, is the shift in the balance of power globally to the Indo-Pacific, from India in the West to America in the East, with Japan playing such a key role. And the ambassador highlighted the certainty associated with this relationship between Britain and Japan. I would also say it allows us to cooperate and complement each other in terms of that Asia-Pacific, Indo-Pacific region, and also to compete as British firms go into Japan's market and Japanese firms come more into the UK market. But in terms of your specific question, there is absolutely no doubt that London will remain the major financial centre of Europe, and I would expect it to remain one of the world's two major financial centres. Clearly, leaving the EU has near-term disruptions for the business models of some firms, but so far, everything seems to have been going quite well. In terms of that equivalence issue that you asked about, equivalence might for some people be the most important issue, but I don't think it should be the key factor that determines our future financial sector relationship. For a financial centre to do well and prosper, three key factors are key. One, its inherent characteristics, and you touched on some of those in your question. If you're cautious about Brexit, you'll say they're Brexit proof. If you're positive about Brexit, as I and many others now in the city are, then you would say these are things to build upon. But in addition to that, it's the regulatory environment, and it's key for the UK to be able to set its own regulatory agenda. And the other key factor, the third one, in addition to those inherent characteristics and the regulatory environment, is where do clients want to do business? And there you need deep, broad, liquid markets. And there's absolutely no doubt that London has those. And indeed, what's interesting is that London, particularly since 2016, has really established itself as the fintech centre, not just in Europe, some might say globally, and is already establishing itself as at the forefront of green finance. And that's another key area in the Japan-UK relationship. So I congratulate you on the report. And I think in terms of the financial sector, yes, always there's challenges when you change anything, but I think so far so good. And I think one should be positive about the future, but no one should be complacent about the competitive global challenge ahead. But it's good that both Japan and the UK seem quite clear on the direction they want to follow.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Minako, if I might come to you with a sort of more trade policy related question as our trade expert on the panel. So I mentioned in my overview of the report a couple of areas in which it could be expanded, so on investment and on digital. So I guess, would you agree with that assessment that the existing trade agreement could have gone a bit further, perhaps could be looked at further on down the line? And then as an addition to that, I know you have a particular interest in trade and services. So also would be good to get your view on how services trade, in particular between the UK and Japan, could be supported either through the agreement or other government action.
Thank you very much, Edward. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to the panelists. And this is very significant session. And I also would like to congratulate Asia House to produce such a very important, report. I fully basically agree all the points you raised. And because I'm trade policy expert and belonging to academics, so I more, sort of giving my observation from the academic point of view. And first of all, well, what will be the kind of issues what could have been done more is, as Stephen just noted, I think one of the missing point, or that the one we could do more, is a kind of the proactive post-Brexit strategy in terms of FDI. So always we say the free trade agreement. So investment is a strategical, thinking of investment is left behind. This is one thing I just really would like to emphasize, especially given that the UK and Japan had a very special investment relationship for 3 decades, more than 30, long term. I think they should not be, undermined. So in that point, from that perspective, one, I'd like to raise 2 points. One is maybe the Japan and the UK would be able to revisit or enhance more trade and investment nexus part of the agreement. What I mean is, the very, comprehensive investment promotion or enhance investment as a whole. That means, of course, tariff zero, and the liberal market liberalization terms already the Japan and the UK are open. But in terms of the rules, there are still several issues to be done. One of the things is, as the previous panelists noted, that EU, UK, Japan trilateral relationship. This is something, within the bilateral relation between the UK and Japan, it's very kind of bottleneck. That's the two countries can't cope with it. But for example, the facilitation of rule and simplification of the rule of origin, yes, to some extent, the SEPA cope with that. But on the other hand, still the diagonal accumulation with EU, unfinished business. And then also the equivalence with the financial services, also the adequate decision, the digital, the free trade, free flow of the data, it is still the grace period. So these things still have to be coped with. Even within the UK-Japan framework, they really have to try to tackle this unfinished business. And the other thing is regulatory cooperation in goods and services. Because of the very limited negotiating time frame, TBT, SPS, nothing touched, and also services, only financial regulatory issues, have to make the progress. But on the other hand, while the bilateral relationship, we're thinking about especially the services trade, the sectoral regulatory cooperation should be enhanced for the long-term point of view. In that point, from that perspective, more kind of cross-departmental collaboration from both sides should be enhanced. And the third thing is movement of natural person business persons. So that some progress has been made under SEPA, but still the UK's commitment is less than what the EU made under the EU-Japan EPA. So that really, from the investment perspective, the free movement of people, is critical. So I think this is kind of the issues, continuous dialogue will be needed. And then lastly, last but at least, as the report, Asian House report mentioned, comprehensive investment chapter. So that encompasses the investment liberalization, investment protection, and the dispute settlement. And as we are aware that for Japan, the UK is the second largest FDI destination. And on the other hand, for the UK, Japan is not really the top investment destination. And then actually, if we look at the FDI stocks, the UK's FDI in Japan is 13% of the Japanese investment in the UK. So this kind of unproportional figures also that is we really have to be aware. So what I would like to say is maybe the SEPA can play a role as a catalyst of renewed business interest. For that, investment protection and dispute settlement is still the kind of area of the issue to be discussed. The empirical evidence actually shows that Japanese FTAs and then bilateral investment treaties were the countries which Japan had investment protection chapters provisions. The Japanese investment shows a positive reaction for that. This is the empirical evidence we see.
Okay.
So
great.
on the other hand, I do not ignore the kind of the ISDS is controversial area. And then actually globally, the review of the ISDS mechanism is taking place, and sensitivity of the non-economic stakeholders in terms of the freedom of the investment policy space for a nation to just promote environment protection and so on. So this is really the issues. Well, just open-minded, and then the UK and Japan have to discuss further what will be the ideal dispute settlement mechanism, and for the long term. So this is about the investment. Then I have no doubt that digital trade is something the UK and then Japan can promote as a rule setter. And on the other hand, I would like to say, I don't want to talk about digital trade and data from very narrow trade policy in mind. What I'd like to say is, first we have to understand that, the complexity of digital trade governance, and so many countries are, look really challenging how to regulate or the achieved innovation and economic prosperity on the one hand with retaining the data protection. So let me just tell you that, while the free data flow and the free services for users and free standards are great benefit of digital trade, but the downside is privacy, cybersecurity, and the platform power, market power, and data divide. So the scholars in this area, academics argue that building trust is the key for digital governance. So this is something that you can just.
Thanks very much for touching on digital. That was very good. I'm just going to go very, very briefly to Katayama-san.
Sorry. Well, I will come back later.
Thank you very much, Minako. Really, really interesting stuff, and thanks for covering the digital and investment and services in that input. Katayama-san, just very briefly before we go to a couple of questions, just if you were to, I guess, ask for one or two tactical measures from the UK and Japan governments to help your members do more business with the UK, what would you ask for? Very, very briefly in 20, 30 seconds, if possible.
Okay. Thank you, Ed. Yeah, and if we look at the world at this time, that we have a various and many important issues to solve that bilateral or multilateral cooperation. And so maybe that our business is strongly connected to that, to provide that solutions from that business viewpoint. After Brexit, that our UK has taken a more outward-looking approach, holding up the Global Britain initiatives.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in particular, that we recognize that our UK building a stronger relationship with Japan and other Asian countries through that Asian Pacific or Indo-Pacific strategy, and that leads that intention to join the CPTPP.
Right.
there's no doubt for Japan that about the importance of the strengthening that relationships as a partner, and to solve that such issues. And at this time that all of us recognize that climate change is that biggest issues maybe. Yeah. So I don't tell that a lot about this, but I appreciate that two governments continue to support in various industries that are not limited to the green industry, but also the other industry like digital or the healthcare and so on. It's a very big issues for all over the world. So that I appreciate that the government support to work together from the private sector to have win-win situation.
The green industry, which is excellent, and good to see that the entrance of one of the other points of the report as well on climate change. I'm just going to go to a couple of audience questions. So we're going to Vikas. If we hand over to Vikas to ask his question, maybe just introduce yourself.
Hi, yes, good morning. Thank you very much. My name is Vikas Agarwal. I'm from the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants and one of their regional heads of policy. One of the questions that we get from a lot of our members, so we have about 750,000 members and students around the world that are studying or have studied our qualification. Japan has always been a big destination for them to go and work, to learn, to build connections there. But of course, the challenge we have is with recognition of their professional qualification. Now, we have recognition in dozens and dozens of countries in the world, and Japan is a big market for us as the UK, but also as a destination for work. And so, what I would like to ask is how we can move forward towards mutual recognition of professional qualifications in accounting, in law, in other such sectors.
And I mean, who would you like to? I'd probably suggest that either Minako or Katayama answers that, but it'd be good to. Who would you like to ask that question?
Both, please. Actually, Katayama and Minako. I think you touched upon freedom of movement already, but just understanding how we build that recognition.
Okay, well, if we go to Minako, because Katayama-san just made another intervention. So Minako, very briefly, just to get another couple of questions on MRPQs, I guess.
So shall I start?
Yes,
so I will be very brief. Thank you very much. Very, very important question. I think, well, the services, well, I did not touch upon the services, but the services is something that's really the UK and Japan has to concentrate, they make a special effort in this area. Especially, I completely agree, the professional qualification, mutual recognition, it's the key for the more, the smooth business. On the other hand, in general, not only in terms of UK and Japan, but in general, trade agreement, it's very difficult to make a mutual, a professional, well, the qualification, mutual recognition on this area. As you see, the EU internal market, they already, spend ages to just make this and the slow progress. So then when it comes to the non-single market, well, it's really different culture background, and then also they had the language problems and everything. And then also the regulatory authorities, different regulatory authorities, so non-trade authorities. So, but well, definitely they're using the framework established under the SEPA, and Japan and UK has to exchange opinions, and then the business input will be very important. And then bilateral, that maybe business, Japanese business and the UK business can well cooperate together to just make input to government.
Excellent, very good. We have another question from Guy Jury from CBI. So Guy, do you want to ask your question?
Ed, thank you very much indeed. Yes, Guy Jury here from the CBI based out in Asia. May I ask the panelists their opinions on the imminent arrival of the new female British ambassador to Japan, Julia Longbottom? What does this show with regard to diversity and inclusion? And perhaps if I could direct the question to Stephen and to Minako-san. Thank you very much.
Stephen, if you want to take that one as a long-term...
Well, thank you. The first point to make is that it's not new to have talented female members in the British Embassy. Over the 30 years that I worked there, we had many. and they were all very distinctive and very punchy and effective at their jobs. The point about Julia is not so much her gender as the fact that she knows Japan like the back of her hand. It's the third time that she has been posted there. And she's a very soft-spoken but effective communicator. So there is a big agenda to be tackled, but I think she's absolutely the right person for the job, and I'm delighted by her appointment.
Excellent. Thanks very much. We have one, probably the last question from Emma Regoda. Emma, if you want to step up and ask your question.
Just unmuting. Thank you. Yeah, great to hear the positive views about financial services from Gerard Lyons in the UK post-Brexit. My question really is around sort of fintech and how to use the financial dialogue that's going to be set up between the regulators to ensure that market access barriers are resolved and enable UK fintechs to establish businesses in Japan. From our conversations here in the City of London Corporation, we've sort of uncovered a few issues that I think the sort of working from home has not been quite as smooth in Japan. And you know, there are some exceptional fintechs and other financial services here in the UK, and how we can sort of utilize the new sort of ways of working and the build on the FTA and CEPA to you know, for UK businesses.
Excellent. Gerard Lyons, if you want to take that one on fintech.
Yeah, well, thank you for the question from Emma. Maybe if I could bring it back, Ed, to your actual report, because the Asia House report focuses very much on both bilateral and also on the ability for Japan and the UK to influence the multilateral scene. And in terms of this particular area, naturally those hurdles, as they've been alluded to, have to be addressed at a bilateral level. But the opportunity, particularly with fintech, is a great opportunity, not just for UK, Japan, but multilaterally. Hence, the UK becoming a member of the CPTPP is very important. Also, the ambassador mentioned the World Trade Organization, and people overlook or maybe tended, partly because the bilateral trade relationship between the US and China was going so difficultly 2 years ago. At that time, many of the advances made at the previous WTO round were often overlooked, and they were very encouraging on the whole area of services. So with the UK back at the WTO, that service sector agenda is very important. I think it will be important naturally for the approach the US takes, and hopefully if the US joins CPTPP, because we've talked about tariffs coming down in industrial areas. We talked about the need for certainty, and Stephen touched on this particularly in terms of the UK future agenda. But when we look at services and fintech, it's those non-tariff barriers that are key. So I think the US, along with the UK, and the UK, along with Japan, can actually do things not only bilaterally, but multilaterally as well. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, thanks very much. So global cooperation is the name of the game. Great. Well, unfortunately, we have run out of time. I would like to thank all of the panelists. So Yoshinori Katayama from the JCCI, Stephen Gumstall from Hitachi Europe, Minako Morita-Yeager from the UK Trade Policy Observatory, and Dr. Gerard Lyons from Senior Fellow at Policy Exchange. Thank you all very much for joining this and for your thoughts that you shared. And I will now pass back to Michael to continue the rest of the day. Thanks.
Ed, thanks very much, and thanks to all of your panelists. A really fascinating discussion. Let's turn now to the global picture and the role Japan and the UK may play on the global stage as the world faces challenges ranging from the devastating impact of the COVID-19 pandemic to increasing international geopolitical tensions and, of course, battling climate change. I'm joined by two distinguished guests. I'd like to welcome to Asia House Takahiko Nakao. Takahiko Nakao was president of the Asia Development Bank from 2013 until January of last year. He's also a former Vice Minister for Finance and International Affairs of Japan. And I'm also joined by Lord Stephen Green, who's former CEO and Chairman of HSBC and UK Trade Minister, and is now, I'm delighted to say, Chairman of Asia House. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us. Really very good to have you. I'd like to start with you, Nakao-san, if I may. Gerard Lyons referred to COVID obviously being the big disruptor, the thing that the world needs to get through now, but pre-COVID drivers are also still having an impact. And he highlighted the Indo-Pacific strategy and the shift, as he called it, to the Indo-Pacific. Is that the venue, is that the vehicle through which the UK and Japan can work together to drive global trade and to drive the global trade order?
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a really interesting meeting, and I enjoyed the discussions by the participants. About the Indo-China initiative, I think it is one way to, in a sense, make the Indo-China countries pit vis-a-vis China, but I don't think it will be a single central institution for taking care of global issues. By the way, I really have a sympathy to the Brexit, which is exit from the EU, because many countries have a sovereign kind of powers. And I think sovereign countries, nations are still the most important institutions for the global issues, because it's the core center for security, social securities and taxations and fiscal policies and so on. So I don't think such an institution beyond the sovereign have such a strong powers to take care of all issues, because taxpayers in the sovereign state and also the voters are sovereign states, aren't they? So the one important issue is based on the sovereign powers. Countries cooperate together for any issues, including platform, technologies, data, and geopolitical issues. So I have a sympathy to the Brexit, and I think the UK made the right decisions, but still we need a global kind of a multilateral cooperation, including Indo-China, Indo-Pacific initiative.
Yes, well, Gerard Lyons, music to his ears, your views on Brexit for sure. Steve McGreen, if I may come to you, US and China trade tensions, or tensions generally, drove the trading climate over the last 3 or 4 years. With Biden in the White House, do you expect that to be the central issue driving global trade and alliances for the years ahead?
I think it will still be the central issue, but not in the same way that it was when the Trump administration was in office. Biden will approach this much more strategically and sensitively, but it's worth reminding ourselves that there's a broad consensus across the American establishment, and not only in the Republican Party, that China is a strategic, commercial, and geopolitical rival or even threat to America, and that will guide the American approach to China. And that has consequences for all of us, and it certainly has consequences both for Britain and for Japan. I think that the CCTPP is an important balance in that trade relationship, certainly as far as the region is concerned. And it's one reason why although I don't share Nakao-san's sense that Brexit was a great release for Britain, I'm well known being on the opposite side of that argument. but even I would recognise that Britain, post-Brexit Britain, has more freedom for manoeuvre, particularly in its trade relationships, than it did as an EU member. And the most important demonstration of that so far has been Britain's application to join the CCTPP. So I'm very excited about that development.
Nakao-san, is the CPTPP of even greater significance if and when Britain accedes to it? Is that going to be, as Stephen mentioned, the sort of counterbalance to what's happening between China and the US?
Yeah, I think so. And it's a very symbolic that the UK is now trying to join a CPTPP, because it's a very comprehensive and very progressive. And so it can invite the US to join it. But can I make a comment about China's rise in Asia? And I think one of the biggest agenda in Asia and also in the international community is how we can see the rise of China as a power. And China is already a very big power commercially, financially, economically, and also the geopolitically. So when I was president of ADB, I visited China 16 times and discussed issues with the ministers and sometimes leaders. And ADB has been lending to China for years from 1986. And in a sense, in the beginning, I was more optimistic about the future of China because of a third plenum decision that market plays a critical role for the resource allocation and so on. Then China has gradually become more authoritarian and also more assertive externally and more repressive internally. So I hope that one of the important issues for the global community, including UK and Japan, also for trade communities, how we can engage China in addition to balancing the power between China and the US and also China and Japan and the other allied countries. But I think one of the big issues is will be the behavior of China in coming years. The China has a resentment about the history, starting from Opium War and Japanese aggression. But I hope China should pursue the more moderate policies because it's to the interest of themselves.
If I stay with you, please, Nakao-san, you mentioned their engagement with China. And during the Trump administration, there was a very combative relationship. Are you suggesting that Japan, the UK, should take a softer approach, a more gentle approach to China in terms of engagement?
Yeah, it's not what I wanted to say. Yeah, we need to combine the different approaches. One is, of course, engagement to continue the kind of a request to China about their policies, including policies for the Asian, geopolitical issues like South Pacific and so on. So balance of power is one thing, but at the same time, so balance of power is important. So the how we can involve the U.S. stronger engagement to Asia is one of the key issues, and I think Japan, the UK should make maximum effort to continue to engage the US economically and for trade issues and tax issues, but also for geopolitical issues. And I hope the UK will be the kind of like-minded group for that, and not just to make China adversary, but to make a balance between China and the United States. But at the same time, we should not be entrapped by the idea of the existing hegemon should be fighting with the emerging hegemon. There should be a room for cooperation. That's what I want to say.
Okay, no, thank you. Stephen Green, is the D10, talk of a D10 being formed, 10 democracies around the G7, is that perhaps a vehicle in which the UK and Japan can take a leading role?
I think possibly, but of course, UK and Japan are both key members of the G7 already. And to pick up on Nakao-san's point about cooperation in dealing with some of these geopolitical issues, there are also some shared agenda items with China, some very obvious shared agenda items. Most obviously, climate change and all of the challenges that follow from that are things that can only be addressed by a genuine international collaboration, and both the UK and Japan, and of course China and America, all have key parts to play in this. And there's some good news and some challenges in that. The good news is that America has decided to rejoin the COP process. I'm personally delighted on behalf of Britain that the COP26, which will in many ways be so critical precisely because this represents the new stage of American re-engagement, is taking place in Britain. I think that's a really exciting opportunity for the new global Britain to demonstrate what it stands for on the world stage. It poses challenges both for Britain. Many people have commented on our recent budget, for instance, that there was very little that could be described as green about that budget. And for Japan, a country which is still building lots of new coal-fired power stations. So we've all got to look at our own records and collectively figure out how to do better on what is, at the end of the day, a shared challenge that surmounts, goes beyond, surpasses in importance any of the geopolitical rivalries we've just been talking about.
Nakao-san, is that where you see areas of cooperation on climate change, as Stephen mentioned?
Yeah, yes, of course. And China is very serious about tackling the climate change issues because it's related to their activities and also related to their environment issues. So it's a kind of social issue for China. And China wants to take a leadership role in the climate actions in the world. It's for sure. So it's one area we can cooperate. And also, I want to add that many people in Japan and in the world now take any actions of China as if it is adversary to the international community. But if we look at the Belt and Road Initiative, they supported the G20 Quality Infrastructure Initiative of Osaka Summit 2 years ago, which is to look at the debt sustainabilities and the environmental issues and the social impact of the project. So China also has ideas to cooperate with the international community, although overall it is becoming more assertive and in many ways, and it's worrying. But of course, there are people who want to cooperate, and there is an element of the cooperations in China.
I want to turn now to ASEAN, and Stephen Green, when you were trade minister, I think you went to every ASEAN country and certainly elevated the understanding of ASEAN in the UK. And of course, Nakao-san, with the ADB, you invested very heavily in infrastructure in ASEAN. So Stephen, to you first, is ASEAN a region where the UK and Japan can partner more aggressively and do much more?
Yes, it is. I don't know about aggressively, but certainly broad partnership. I'm sure we won't partner aggressively. We will partner constructively because there is a huge infrastructure need throughout ASEAN. You at Asia House have done remarkable work on explaining the enormous opportunities that there are, obviously for British businesses, but internationally, and Japan is very prominently involved. The gradual dismantling of trade barriers within ASEAN continues. We are beginning to see the emergence of something like a common market across ASEAN, and it's an enormous market, of course. It is, in population terms, bigger than the EU, and potentially in economic terms of more importance in the end than the EU, although that's some way down the road. It would be remiss of me not to mention, however, that there are also some political or geopolitical issues. Cambodia is a much discussed case, and tragically, latterly, we've seen the terrible events in Myanmar, where I think that countries like Japan and Britain and the EU members and America and ideally China would present a common face to the junta that has taken power there. Because that's a tragic development for one of the ASEAN larger members demographically.
Same question to you, Nakao-san, just to wrap up our session. ASEAN, is that the area, is that the region where UK and Japan can work very closely?
I think so. Yeah, you made a really good point. How we can include ASEAN as a kind of members of the international community, which are growing now, and also with the populations of 650 million people, and also the GDP of $3 trillion, which is about 60% of Japan. So, and those are independent, very motivated countries with the growing populations and very market-oriented policies. For instance, Vietnam and Philippines, they are so motivated, and they are not trying to decide which side they support, the US or China. They want to be independent. They want to be players who can make which can make the contribution to the international community by their own. But as Ambassador Green said, the Myanmar issue is really worrying, and Myanmar made real progress after 2008, and President Thein Sein made a very good decision to hand over to Aung San Suu Kyi, and the military also, in a sense, got some gain because of the opening of the economy and their interest in the country. So I think they should not, in a sense, jeopardize the progress of the countries and also the interests of themselves again. So how to deal with the Myanmar issues by the UK, Japan, ASEAN countries is a really key important issue at this moment.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid, gentlemen, we need to leave it there because we've in fact gone over time. Takahiko Nakao and Stephen Green, thank you very much for joining us. And this is the end of the session. I'd like to thank the government of Japan for supporting Asia House in putting together this report. I'd like to thank all of the speakers for contributing today and also all those who contributed to the research that we did. And finally, I'd like to thank the audience. Thanks very much for taking part. Very grateful that you could join us today. And we'll leave it there. Thank you all. Thanks to the embassy as well, the Japanese embassy in the UK. Wonderful working with you. So thanks very much. Have a great day. Have a great evening. Stay safe and stay well. And we'll see you very soon. Goodbye for now.